The last time we had our souped up G4 Cube out, we jumped through a bunch of hoops to put the fastest possible video card in it, a PC G4 6200 that we removed pins from and flashed with a hacked ROM to work on Mac. And oh boy is it glorious. Full core image support and core animation support. It is buttery smooth in Leopard, and it absolutely flies in demanding games of the time. The only real issue is that the card is just kind of floating around in there. So today, let's see if we can solve that with some help from an awesome viewer of the channel, and then we'll talk about some plans I have for the future of this cube. So stay tuned. So the reason the card is just floating around in there is because the cube uses a special faceplate for the graphics card, and in order to fit the 6200 in there, I had to remove the original faceplate and just kind of leave it loose. And leaving it loose in there definitely is not ideal, because one errant bump of the cube or my super wobbly table could potentially knock the card out of its socket and possibly damage something. Now, in that video, I asked for your suggestions on mounting the card, and oh man, did you all deliver. In fact, a viewer named Zachary came through in a huge way and offered to 3D print a bracket, even sending me the design mocked up to make sure that the measurements fit. And he went above and beyond, printing several variations of the bracket, which I have right here, and he sent them along with some hardware to make sure that at least one of these is going to fit and mount correctly. So thank you so much, Zachary. This is seriously awesome. And wow, this is so cool. There are 6 different options here, each with slight differences, and he's even mounted little metal grommets in there in most of them so we can screw the stuff in, and the ones that don't have grommets, he's put little hexagonal places for nuts to go in there so that we can screw into those instead. And I really like that he's made different variations with different ports open, because as you know, in the video, I took off the detachable little VGA extension, but if we wanted to put this back on, we can use one of these to fit that. But I think I'm not going to put this on there, which means that we have these 3 that we're going to try. Let's crack open the cube and then see if one of these fits. All right, at this point, I've taken this thing apart so many times, I could probably do it in my sleep, even with all of its little weirdness about this handle not popping up correctly. Yeah, so you can definitely see how the card is loose in here, definitely wobbly, because there's no faceplate holding it in place. And the video card is actually plugged into an AGP adapter, which then plugs into the motherboard. So there's kind of like 2 things daisy-chained here, and definitely contributing to how wobbly this is. And you can see the original faceplate, there's no way that's going to fit, and one of the options would be to use a Dremel and actually cut this thing apart so that it could fit in there and then drill holes and stuff, but that'd be very difficult and I think a little bit overkill, which is why I'm super excited about these faceplates here. So let's see if these line up correctly, and then yeah, put this card together. Yeah, so one thing I didn't really consider is how this is going to kind of connect to the board here. The original card had like stuff to mount the old faceplate to it, but this card doesn't have anything like that. So it kind of, the S-video out kind of pushes the faceplate away. I wonder if just putting in one of the screw connectors for the DVI port would make a big difference. So yeah, why don't we try mounting this in the case and screwing it in and seeing how it fits. Wow, look at that. That fits beautifully. That is almost exactly, I think, where the DVI connector comes out. So let's try to put the card in there and then put one of the standoffs on it and see how sturdy it is. Oh man, that's perfect. Look at that. Everything lines up absolutely perfectly. And even just as it is, the card is now actually pretty stable, but let's put on the standoffs, which I think will be enough to hold it in place. All right, so that's actually pretty rock solid. Now that I put these standoffs in place, this port does not move at all. Now, the one thing that Zachary said is that this is not all the way cured. He cured it about halfway, so it would still be a little bit flexible. So I'm probably going to have to take this back out and sit it in the sun for about 30 minutes to cure it the rest of the way now that everything fits in place. So yeah, Zachary, thank you so much. This is absolutely perfect. And I'll see if we can't get the plans for these things up online somewhere in case anyone else needs them. Now that we know they fit absolutely perfectly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about future plans for this. And I mean like near future plans. So one thing I'm still a little bit concerned about is that the cube might still be running hot because, as you know, we've put a lot of upgrades in this thing already. I mean, pretty much every possible upgrade that could go into this machine is in there, and they all generate heat. So we've got the upgraded video card. We have a 1.2 gigahertz Sonnet G4 processor upgrade. We have an SSD in there. We have the upgraded blue VRM to supply power to all this stuff without burning out. So this is a very modded cube that makes a lot of heat. I'm definitely worried that it's still running too hot. Now, we put a fan in here, and that fan is currently attached to the fan connector on the VRM here, and it does run, and especially because of the RGB lighting in here, when you look through the top of the cube, you can see the fan spinning, but it doesn't spin very fast. And it's also kind of a low power fan because it's a thin fan. It's really hard to get to. You have to take the motherboard apart usually to get to it. But what I'd like to do is see if I can fit a full-size fan in there. And I think this Be Quiet fan is the perfect candidate because instead of just being a straight up box, the mounting points are on this little plastic kind of extended nib here. And to get this in there, I'm thinking I can cut off the top nib, which will allow it to clear the opening, and then just mount it using the bottom hole here. And I really think that'll be strong enough. I mean, this is pretty strong plastic. There's no flex even to the thin outer rim. So yeah, I think we're going to try that. And then I also want to hook it up, instead of hooking it up to the VRM, I want to hook it up just to a Molex adapter so the fan just runs all the time. And hopefully, since it's this Be Quiet fan, and these are really quiet, running full speed the whole time, we hopefully won't hear it. Now, something really cool, my friend David Stahl hacked a CNC autonomous fan controller into his G4 Cube that automatically spins up the fan depending on how hot it is, and you can set what the temperature is. And that's a really elegant solution. I'll link to his video right here. So maybe I should do this. Okay, let's put this thing back together. Oh man, moment of truth, here we go. Oh, look at that. Just absolutely perfect. No more wiggling around. Fits in there perfectly. So obviously it's not Action Retro if something doesn't go wrong. And now two things went wrong. First, I stepped on the ADB connector for the monitor, and with a sickening crunch, bits of plastic fell off, so I'm going to have to super glue that back together. And then it turns out when I tried to turn this on, the computer came on and the beautiful RGB lit up, but nothing on the screen. And I took it back apart, And it turns out the outside standoff for the DVI connector pushes the card just a little bit out of this AGP slot here. So I'm just going to take that one out and just leave one standoff in there. Yeah, now it can push totally into the slot. So it's pretty rock solid. I mean, it doesn't really move around unless you move it in here. Like there's not enough force up here, but of course, sitting on a desk and being pushed around, there probably would be enough force. So I'll probably just find a screw that I can screw in there that's the same thread as this standoff, just to keep that in place a little bit better. And yeah, we'll just have one standoff here that the monitor cable can plug into. So something worth mentioning, if you do decide to try this yourself, the tolerances on the bottom of the cube for the video card are so tight that if you have a chunky DVI connector like this thick boy here, the screw that holds the bracket in place is actually going to block the edge of the DVI connector. So you have a couple of options. Probably the best one is to find as flat of a screw as possible to mount the bracket in place so it's flush on the metal of the cube. Another thing you might have to do is whittle away a little bit of the edge of the connector if it's very thick like this one. So now I want to talk a little bit about why I'm so interested in making sure that this cube runs completely cool. And that is because a couple people in the MCU, the Macintosh Cinematic Universe, namely people in and around the Mac Yak show, we're doing a PowerPC challenge. And actually this year it's the PowerPC and 68K challenge, where we're going to spend 1 week using only PowerPC or 68K computers to see just how much of our daily stuff we can do. Now, I still have a day job, and my day job is very demanding of computer equipment in that I'm working with a lot of very huge files. So yeah, it's going to be difficult to try to do all of that on PowerPC plus the YouTube stuff. And I could cheat. I could use my 12-inch PowerBook G4 1.67 gigahertz with 1.25 gigs of RAM. But actually, I use this PowerBook all the time already. In fact, I know it might not seem like it, but I actually do write scripts for each of these videos, and I write them on this PowerBook and print them out and tape them up on the wall while I'm recording. So I use this PowerBook all the time. So this is going to be the backup. I'm going to try to do everything from the cube. I'm going to put the newest version of LibreOffice that I can find on here to do all big spreadsheet stuff. And yeah, I'm going to see how much I can do from this cube, but I need to make sure it runs cool. And then of course, work is not the only thing you do on a computer. If you'll remember, we did actually install Minecraft on this thing, and it ran reasonably well, actually surprisingly well for how slow this processor is, 1.2 gigahertz single core and only 1.5 gigs of RAM. And the video card is more than enough for Minecraft. I mean, Minecraft actually doesn't need that much of a video card. It's much more dependent on the processor, as many of you pointed out in the comments on that video. But being that it's dependent on the processor, one of the biggest things that slows this down is rendering the world and figuring out the world and building out all the chunks. So what I'd actually like to do is delegate that to another computer. So I want to turn this Mac Mini into a server for Minecraft 1.2.5 and then see how much better this game plays and how much higher of a frame rate we get once the cube doesn't have to worry about building the world. So what I'd like to do once I get this server put together, I want to actually put it online and let the rest of the PowerPC challenge world play Minecraft. And actually, even you at home watching this, if you want to play Minecraft on your PowerPC online with us, if we can get this server to work, it'll be interesting to see how many people can actually play on it at the same time. So yeah, that's it for today's video. If you like this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more Macintosh shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below. Thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Chris, Justin, Sorta Eclectic, and Spike, who are my highest tiered patrons, and all of my Patreon supporters for helping make these shenanigans possible.